Okay, but thank you very much. It was very interesting to listen to my introduction in French. I never heard that before, but it sounds very good. I have to apologize. I've learned French in school, and my wife is a French teacher, but my French is not good enough for a scientific presentation, so I try to do it in English, and I hope that everyone will understand me. And in my presentation, I will talk about the role of social innovation in the multiple crises. The last time that I've been here in Montreal at the Colloque, the CRISES, it was in 2014. And while we live in a turbulent world, many things have changed. But with regard to the topic of this conference, there are two important things. On the one hand, we have seen some really amazing developments in the field of social innovation that has become growing attention in different countries of the world. And on the other hand, which is the bad news, that we have also seen the deepening and also intensifying of the social, ecological, and economic crisis. And therefore, I will speak about the relationship between social innovation and crisis. And I will also try to say a few things about the specifics of this crisis that we are going through in the current situation compared to older crises. And my main part will be that I talk about the role of social innovation to cope with the crisis and to shape our societal future. So to start with the good news, I would say that we have seen an upswing of social innovation discussion in research, also in innovation policy, and we also find countless approaches of successful social innovation that illustrate the strengths and the potential of social innovation to cope with the great societal challenges and to help us to shape our future. And many of them, you know, we have seen yesterday a lot of interesting presentation about the social economy, which has a long tradition here in Quebec. We have seen something about cooperation. We will listen later to a presentation of Raphael Ziegler with a session about cooperations here. But also social entrepreneurship and social innovation is a very important point. And last but not least, also there are a lot of ecological topics which are addressed by social innovation. So it's a broad concept, and I think that Quebec has been since many years a hotspot of social innovation. Maybe it's the most traditional research institute with 39 years of experience in the world of social innovation research, but also a lot of practices that has been developed here in Quebec. And I think, which is very interesting, that many of these practices have been triggered by the crisis in the 1980s. As Sonia told us yesterday, and I just quoted an article from Juan Luis Klein. You will know him very well because he was a former director of the institute. And he also said that the experimenting with new solutions was triggered by the crisis in the 80s, which was an economic crisis, a crisis of the polyistic production model, and which leads to also a lot of problem, and that many of this experiment, which have diffused and have become impact, what was taken up by the innovation policy and also shaped the region here, which is a very important point. And also in Europe, the starting point, which was 20 years later, to discuss social innovation more intensively in European policy, was a crisis. It was the financial and economic crisis in the year 2006 and 2007. And the former president of the European Union, Manuel Barroso, said that creativity and innovation in general, and social innovation in particular, are essential factors for fostering sustainable growth, securing jobs, and increasing competitive abilities, especially in the midst of the economic and financial crisis. And since then, we have a follow-up of many crises, also in the European Union. And so social innovation became a very important topic of innovation policy. And as the former Commissioner of Research and Innovation, Carlos Moedas, said that in the European Union, we are going to put more money into social innovation, not because it's trendy or because it's something that we have to do, but we see that the future of innovation is about social innovation, and that is a very good news. In this uptake of social innovation in the innovation policy is also connected to a general shift in understanding what innovation policy is about. The traditional innovation policy was about competitiveness, was about economic growth, was based on the Schumpeterian concept of innovation. And this had changed because we see that this kind of innovation policy was not able to cope with the great societal challenges. And therefore, it was very important to see how we can engage research and innovation and give it direction to be able to create a more sustainable growth and more sustainable society. And that is the so-called mission-oriented innovation policy that is, since many years, the basis of the European Union and the European Union innovation policy. And what is very important, that social innovation is not part of the social policy in the European Union. It is a part in the core of innovation and economic development, which is very important to see. And since many years, its approach to combine social and technological innovation to be able to cope with the great societal challenges. And that also means that social innovation in the European Union is not assigned only to the civil society or social economy, but it's also I think at least the try to integrate and involve companies and the economy and the traditional economy in these activities of social innovation. And there are a lot of programs that I would say like processes for planet that are financed from the public sphere and also from companies together, and that also have a focus on social innovation. And since these 20 years nearly, the Commission has done a lot to promote social innovation. A wide range of activities which has left behind at the beginning a strong focus on social entrepreneurship. It's much broader now, and it's about networking, it's about offer funding opportunities, it's about creating ecosystems of social innovation, and it's also about impact, the social impact that this innovation has. And yesterday at the site visit, I also heard about the importance of impact here in the discussion in the Quebec region with regard to the financial support of these social economy activities. And that is something which is very important. And in the European Framework Program, you won't get a project if you cannot demonstrate the impact that this project will have. And therefore, it is a very important point to connect the debate about social innovation with the social impact that this has. And the next step, I think, which we are going in the European Union is to link stronger the social innovation community with the mission-oriented innovation policy. And we will start a project which is funded by the European Community in May this year, which has the aim to connect these two communities and also to try to find new funding opportunities for social innovation with regard to the missions, and also try to promote training and advice and create, establish a community of social innovation and the mission-oriented innovation policy in Europe. And this is done by a consortium where researchers come together from the European School of Social Innovation, but also politicians like the Portuguese Portuguese social innovation initiatives that has a very big influence in Portugal, and they spend a lot of money to create an ecosystem of social innovation in Portugal. But also NGOs and incubators are part of this project consortium. So it's very important to bring together the different partners of the ecosystem of social innovation to increase the impact. There's also another good news that also in Germany we have seen a lot of development with regard to social innovation and take it up in innovation policy. Germany, as you might know, is often very proud of its engineers. And for a long time, the national strategy of innovation in Germany has a strong focus on technology and high-tech. So it was called high-tech strategy. That was the status that I could present 10 years ago. And since 2016, social innovation get a higher point in the agenda of the German government. And also in the high-tech strategy at the beginning, they say that we employ a comprehensive term of innovation, which covers not only technological but also social innovation. And what is also very important, we include society as main actor. And traditionally would say the main actor in innovation policy is the companies and is the economy, but this is a change which is very important to see. And so they hope that social innovation could contribute to overcome the challenges of societal and regional change. And since that, we have seen a very impressive development where social innovation comes from the margin to the mainstream of innovation, of German innovation policy. And a very important step was, milestone was the resolution of the German parliament, the Bundestag, in 2020, which called the government to strengthen the social innovation support and also to, I would say, coordinate the different activities of the ministries that work with the concept. And the government that has just been leaving their office, the Ampel coalition, called in Germany the Green, Social Democrat and Liberal government, has done a lot to promote social innovation. They had appointed a commissioner for social innovation, developed a future strategy for research and innovation, which was no longer called high-tech strategy, but future strategy, and was based on a combination of social and technological innovation. And the last point was that they developed a national strategy for social innovation. And this is a very important point because it was not only about innovation policy, but it was a broad approach where also economic affairs, environmental policies, social policy were brought together and integrated in this national strategy. And we also see, and that is also a remark with the crisis, they don't call it crisis, but it was in the view of deep-reaching social, ecological, technological, and geopolitical change, we call also could change challenges or crises. We think that we need social innovation and social enterprise make an independent contribution towards this. And I think that is a very important point. And I don't want to go into the different approaches and methods, but you can download the national strategy only in English. I'm not sure if it's in French, but it's available in English, and you can take a look what different measures and approaches the German government uses to promote social innovation in a very broad sense. And that is something I would say that Germany has become somehow a forerunner of the social innovation policy in Europe, at least. And the last thing with remark to Germany is that we also built up a digital platform for social innovation together with our colleagues from the Social Entrepreneurship Network, and we have the scientific part. And this is to create a social innovation community and give opportunities for an exchange of ideas and to bring together the different aspects and perspectives on social innovation. And our part is to bring the universities and research institute into this discussion about social innovation because I think that they can make really important contribution to promote that, and I think we can learn a lot about CRISES, which has a long tradition to work together with society in this field, and that is something that we also try to do in Germany. So far the good news, but now we have also come to some bad news, because I think, as I mentioned before, even social innovation has been really a very successful concept. It doesn't prevent that we have a deepening of our crisis, intensifying of our crisis, and Morin and Ken spoke about the polycrisis, or I would say multiple crises that just are going on and intensifying. And I think there are four main characteristics that differentiate this crisis that we are witnessing today, and I think we will witness them in the next decades from the crisis before, because I think this crisis are all encompassing and affects all areas of our social life. They are really profound, and I think everyone is affected by these crises. They are persistent and permanent. I think we shouldn't talk about overcome the crisis within a few years and get back to the new normal, but to cope with the crisis. I think that is a very important difference with that, and to prepare our societies to be able to cope with the crisis and be resilient. That is a thing, I think. And last point, I think it's also very important that it's arrived at the center of late modernity. That is, it's nothing superficial, but it really is something that makes our understanding of how societies work and what's about the progress we are going, and that we are going to development, economic and social development, is something that is put on the table, and we do not know if it will be going on like that. And it's also affecting the industrial countries, the well-developed countries. 20 years ago, a crisis was something that we know from the global south. We heard about this crisis, and 10 years ago we heard about the crisis in Greece, which was also far away from Germany. But now the crisis has arrived in Europe, in Germany and other countries, and also if you take a look at your neighbor in the south, that is also, I think, an expression of the deep crisis that we are facing, and that is nothing that is only in the periphery, but it's really coming to the center of our society. And it's not only that we see this crisis, like Nancy Fraser mentioned in her really very interesting and inspiring analysis of the crisis and their origin in the capitalistic society. But I think it's very important that she said it's overarched by political dysfunctions to envision and implement solutions. So the policy failure is a very important point that we have to see. And I think that this policy failure is connected to a point that the crisis is deeply rooted in our forms of life, in our social practices, in our social order, I think. And Rahel Jägi, who is a German social philosopher, she works very closely together with Nancy Fraser, and I think the book was dedicated to Rahel Jägi. She says in their analysis of the crisis, it's becoming increasingly clear that the existing social order and the established practices and institutions associated with it are no longer able to solve the problems. On the contrary, they themselves create and exacerbate them. I think that is a very important point which we have to see. And that is also true for the traditional concept of innovation, which was seen for a long time as solution, but the Schumpeterian concept of innovation, which focused on innovation as an engine of economic growth and economic development, has also his dark sides. And Schumpeter himself defines innovation as a creative destruction. And at that time, he thought destruction we have to take into account, accept the destruction, because the benefits of this innovation are so great, and we will see a better life with all this economic development. But if you see at these photos that I put on the slide, I think we can see that it might be that the destructive power of this innovation lead to unintended consequences that now are the real result of this innovation. So I think that is no surprise that there is the call for a transformative innovation policy, like Johan Scott and colleagues mentioned. And they have the assumption that the existing research and development system and national systems of innovation frames, they are not able to address the environmental and social challenges because, like also the Sustainable Development Goals, they need a transformative perspective on that. It's not only to try to repair something, but to transform something. That is something that is a very important point. And therefore, my last part of my presentation, my main part of the presentation, I would like to say a few things about the role of social innovation in these processes of societal transformation, which is a very important point And I think if you go back in the history, the long history of the concept of social innovation, which is much longer than the concept of technology innovation, as Benoit Gaudin, you know him quite well, I think, because he worked here in Montreal, has said. And he also mentioned that the concept of social innovation was always connected to processes of societal transformation and seen as a specific form of social change. So he said, for most of the history, innovation has nothing to do with economics or technology or with creativity in a very narrow sense, but it was a political concept. And it was a concept, a word used to express our concept of change, or rather as a specific type of change. Innovation is change that is human-made and deliberate. So there was no divine natural order of things. There was no king or maybe an autocrat that tell us how our society is, but we are the people that have to create our own society. And so I would say that we focus on social innovation more as a modus of change, a mode of change, and not as a product, a service, or something like that. And this is something which becomes increasingly dominant mode of change, because the top-down mode of change, which is ordered by master plan or important white man, that doesn't work anymore to cope with these great societal changes. And this understanding of social innovation is also rooted in a lot of social theory. I like especially the work from Gabriel Tarde, who is a long, I would say, underestimated sociologist of social change and innovation. And for him, innovation is something that happens in the interplay between inventions that are made by humans and then being imitated and so come into society. And this invention can be technological innovation, but technological inventions but also be a new social practice, new social institutions. That's a very broad concept. And he said that is very important. The real cause of change consists of a chain of certainly very numerous ideas, which however are different and discontinuous, yet they are connected together by even far more numerous acts of imitation for which they serve as a model. So this is a kind of mode of social change that is connected to the concept of social innovation. And other sociologists like Ogburn and Robert Merton and even Popper, I think, worked on the concept of innovation in that way. So given this specific feature of innovation, I think it's come to no surprise that social innovation is often connected with cities or regions like Montreal, which is, I would say, a hotspot of social innovation since 40 years. And Branson and Evers said that cities are the birthplace of most social innovation. Cities are teeming with new ideas initiated by citizens, professional and policy makers. And there are the places where you feel the societal challenges and they need to be attacked, and also the spaces for experimentation, which is a very important point. And you can also develop infrastructures like we have seen yesterday in the site visits to promote and to help to diffuse social innovations. And also Frank Moulin, you know also very well, I think, has in his studies a strong focus on urban and regional development. And he said that urban studies and the discipline practicing them have been among the main incubators of social innovation theory in the last decades. And I think he is totally right to write that. I think he was also one of the first, together with the colleagues here in Montreal, that work on the concept of innovation and really try to diffuse it, very important. But we learn also in Dortmund. So also in Dortmund, we try to convince the government and the mayor that innovation is more than technology. And I'm part of a university of technology, but I also be quite successful to convince our rector that innovation is more, and that also technology innovation needs to interplay with social innovation. And the city of Dortmund has become, as first German city, awarded with the European Capital of Innovation, and not because they have really a very prominent technology center, but they have a concept which is innovation next door. And they say innovations are not based on a single brilliant idea from a genius. They come about when people work together on a shared vision for a better future. That's why we offer innovation in Dortmund a good breeding ground and involve all stakeholders through an open communication culture and broad participation processes. And that is the concept which make Dortmund to the European innovation capital. And there's also a problem with cities as birthplace of social innovation, because sometimes you have a limited diffusion for social innovation, because local solutions sometimes stay on the local level, and many of the social innovators, they don't even try to diffuse their good ideas, because they want to solve and tackle a problem. They are not a businessman that would like to develop a business plan. They are really satisfied if they solve the problem. And it's also difficult to translate this because you cannot copy it and take it like an iPhone. You can take an iPhone here, or in Germany it's always the same iPhone, but the social innovation had to be adjusted and adapted to the local surroundings, and that is what it makes difficult for social innovation to be diffused. And therefore, the very important question is, how can we help to develop social innovation? How can we help to diffuse social innovation that comes maybe from the local level? How can we increase the impact of social innovation? And there are some models which try to explain that. That is a model from the Open Handbook of Innovation from the Young Foundation. I think it's a very entrepreneurial model, which comes from someone has an idea and then develops a prototype and then develops strategies to bring it on the market and so on. And I think that's not the right way to develop social innovations. And if you compare that, for example, to the many history examples, the case studies that Frances Westley and her colleagues give in the book, The Evolution of Social Innovation, we see how complex the development of social innovation is, and that this circle of social innovation coming from the entrepreneurship wouldn't be the right way. But also critical with socio-technical perspective, which plays a very important role in the traditional innovation studies, which thinks mostly about the change and transformation of socio-technical systems, like the energy system, like the mobility system, and so on. And I think that social innovation and societal transformation is much more. It's about institution. It's about new models of economy, like the social economy, which is a very important part of that. And therefore, in our encyclopedia, which was mentioned already, we put a strong focus on the theoretical underpinning of social innovation and to learn better how social innovation can contribute to processes of social change. Systemic thinking is very important, how it connects to sustainable development, also to a digital transformation, and how we can develop ecosystems of social innovation. And there is a very interesting article from Bono Pell and René Kemp, which try to give us an overview about the different aspects and approaches to transformation. So this is a little bit a recommendation to read this article. And we see that socio-technical change is something that is a part of a broader societal transformation, but it's only a part. It's not the result, or it's not the main focus that we have to see. So we have to see that social innovation and societal transformation is a broad and very, I would say, complex processes. And that is also where our definition comes in, and how we try to connect social innovation with societal change. And we see social innovation as a new combination of social practices. And for us, social practices are the basic union of the social. So our societies, our forms of life, they connect, they are based on connected social practices, ensemble of social practices and institution that is the basic unit of our society. And to change them, we have to change this social practices, which is a very important point. And the second point is that this is prompted by certain actors or constellation of actors. It's something that had been to be done intentionally to become an innovation, which is a very important point. And it's also have to be accepted and diffused widely through society. Otherwise, it would be an idea. Some good idea or social practice that's only something that, you know, in Montreal doesn't have an impact only in Montreal. But if you think about societal transformation, I think you have to diffuse that, this social innovation. And normally, it's not the market where you diffuse social innovation, but it's a process of imitation and policy processes that are very important. And finally, you have institutionalized them, and then you have a new institution which maybe is better able to solve our problems. And this understanding of social innovation has also consequences for the governance of social innovation processes. And we think that you can understand those social innovation processes as a process of social learning, of imitation, of institutionalization and routinization of those practices that is done by the society, and maybe also, I would say, supported by a policy agenda. But I think the most things that have to happen in the society itself, and they are shaped by actors and therefore open-ended. There's no end of this process, no end of history that we now have finally find a place where everything is fine. I think that is an illusion that we have. And that also means that you cannot steer social innovation by a master plan or control that, but you have to create framework conditions where you open up spaces for experimentation, for trying to make new things, and that is about creating an ecosystem of social innovation, which brings together the major agents of social innovation. For us, I think definitely it's a civil society, but if you would like to bring on more transformative power, you also need politicians, you also need the academia, and you also need the economy. It's very important to see that these four actors have to work together to create something like that. And you need infrastructures and centers for social innovation and places where people come together, co-work spaces that we found in the technology innovation since many years, but you also need them in social innovation. And that means that if you would like to increase the impact of social innovation, you have to open up the process of innovation to society and include all stakeholders into the development. And you have to combine the potential of social innovation in social economy, civil society, business firms, and state, which is very important. So I would say you cannot assign social innovation to a specific sector, the social sector or something like that. You have to promote alliances between universities, company, and the state around social innovation. I just gave an example in Germany, how that could work. You have to empower the people, and you have to think innovation bottom-up, not only top-down, which is very important. And you also have to ameliorate the conditions of participation and self-management in the place of social innovation. So that sounds very good, but we all know that's not very easy. And we know since Machiavelli that there is nothing more difficult to plan, more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to manage than the creation of a new order of things. This is true. Whenever these enemies have the ability to attack the innovator, they do so with the passion of partisans, and while the others defend him sluggishly, so that the innovator and his party alike are vulnerable. And that is something that is very important in times of crisis and right-wing governments, I would say. So you need to be resistant against these things. And that also shows that we need to think about power relations. I think I can make it very short, because in the last conference, Pro Abellino was here and gave, I think, a very interesting keynote about the power relation. And she said, understanding the transformative potential of social innovation thus requires us to study how existing power relations are altered and or reproduced in processes of social innovation, as well as the extent to which actors are empowered or disempowered through processes of social innovation. But the good news is, I think, that social innovation, they promote participation and action. So social innovation is not doing things for people, but with people. I think that is a very important point. That's a decentralization of power. It's a reduction of social inequality and creating awareness and changing values, and also changing the use of technology as a tool of empowerment. You could use, for example, digital technology to broaden the social injustice, or you can use it to create social innovation, which is a very important point to see. And I think that is also very important, that this power relation, to change power relations, means that you also have to connect to social movements and to link to social movements. And maybe we can say that social innovation is not only a research community, but also part of a broader social movement that works together to change the conditions to work. I think that is a very important point to see. And also in Quebec, I think this is a learning that is there. And also to get back to the article from Juan Luis Klein, he said organizations associated with social movements were then seen as promoters of collective action that are oriented towards a more democratic model of development and rooted in civil society. So you have learned that very early. I think in some Anglo-American countries and Europe, we have to learn that too. And that brings me to my last point, 5 minutes, I think it's good. Last point of my presentation, and the last feature that I think is very important with regard to social innovation and the transformative power that social innovation has. I think the idea of utopian aspiration in social innovation means that social innovation not only offer practical solutions, what they do, to existing problems, but they can also contain a visionary component. And most of them have also, if they have even a small solution, they have also more in mind and have a different approach to how we should organize our living together, our economy. And so most of social innovation contain a vision that stimulates people's imagination and challenges them to question existing social practices and structures, which is, I think, a very important point. And it's a very big difference to the traditional innovation, the capitalistic innovation, like Jens Becker, the German sociology of economy said. He said that for the most part, the fictional expectation that play also a very important role in a capitalistic society that are pursued in the capitalistic economy express no utopian aspiration for individuals or for society, nothing that reaches beyond the demands of capitalistic accumulation. I think that is something which is a very important difference within social innovation and the traditional understanding of innovation. So the power of social innovation, I think, lies in the fact that they generally not only aim to improve current social conditions in the short term, but also have a long-term comprehensive transformation of society in mind. And if you take a look at all these examples that I give, it's a social enterprise, it's a cooperatives, it's a social economy, and others that we find. I think that's a very important point. So now we have talked and learned a lot about Europe, and yesterday I've learned a lot about Quebec, but I think social innovation is much broader. We have a lot of examples from social innovation and similar concepts in the Global South, and Carolina and Jon is here with the Observatorio of Social Innovation in Santa Catarina, which is also a very important, I think, very interesting mapping activity in social innovation, bringing together the community. But also the Tecnología Social, which is a different, but I think it's a lot of similarities, which is important. El Buen Vivir concepts in Bangladesh. Mohamed Yunus, you all know him. I think he's still prime minister there. I'm not sure, but he was. And also in India, there's a lot of things. And I think that we can learn a lot. Especially I learned a lot to speak to the colleagues from the Global South, which have a lot of experience, long tradition of social, maybe longer than especially us in Europe. And that is something that is very important, and where we have to strengthen the cooperation and work together to create a better world in this situation of societal crisis. So that brings me now to my last slide. And I think we have, in the upcoming disputes and conflicts will certainly come, I think we need to be aware that to introduce change into an established order is always something very difficult. If it is to convince a king or a prince or autocrat or oligarch, I think it's the same. And therefore, we have to be aware that for centuries, social innovation was contested because it was a subversive concept. So nothing that was supported by the people that have the power, but something that have to be brought up from bottom up. And so maybe if we have that in mind, we will see that this crisis that we have is not only a very difficult time, but all these crises may open up new avenues for better and just society, and that we as social innovation community could be part of this movement that makes our society a better place and overcome the crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Alors, nous aurons quelques minutes. Le temps file, malheureusement. Je prendrai, donc, si vous avez des questions pour le professeur Howald, je prendrai peut-être quelques minutes pour les entendre. Vous pouvez évidemment les formuler en anglais ou, si vous préférez, en français, et on pourra traduire. Donc, si vous avez souhaité poser des questions, les micros sont sur les côtés. Donc, je vous invite à vous lever et à aller poser votre question là, dans un des deux micros, soit d'un côté ou de l'autre de la salle. Là, je vois une main levée déjà.
Oui, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for the wonderful talk. We certainly learned a lot from your presentation. And I really appreciate how you were really reconceptualizing the very notion of innovation beyond what's often perceived as more commercial or technological innovation. But at the same time, I'm wondering if you have any insight about any dark side of the very world of the innovation itself in terms of potentially, like perhaps directing our attention more to the new forms of organizing or like kind of next new thing, even in a socially oriented and mission-oriented ways, rather than, whereas we might actually have a lot of knowledge and practices in, as you just spoke about the indigenous communities and many land-based communities in the Global South, we do have a lot of like traditions. And of course, Annie spoke beautifully this morning about indigenous communities in Quebec. And I'm wondering whether you have any insight about, somewhat the potential dark side of innovation, the very focus on innovation as something new and novel. And if you have some thoughts about how we might be able to even reconceptualize the word innovation even further to really embrace the possibility of looking into the almost the Asian features, right? Like there's something that's already present in the practices and knowledge of like for over centuries and millennia, but have been suppressed. I would love to hear your thought about that element. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is a very important question, I think. I would say that the difference between the Schumpeterian understanding of innovation, where innovation is as driver of innovation, of economic success, always good, and that is, we don't care for the destructive potential of innovation. Social innovation would mean that we have to ask, does it contribute to make our lives better, sustainable? And that might be that we have to go back to practices that have been developed centuries ago, that we have forgotten some of these things, and that we have to introduce in our society. So that means that not the new is the most important thing, but what is the result of these processes. That is one thing I have to say. So it's not if you have to compare a new social practice and an old social practice, the new is not always the better one. There are a lot of examples that the older one is better than the new one with respect to the life of people. And the second thing I would say, that even you have the intention to bring on better things with social innovation, we know from practice that it always may have consequences that you do not intend. So you always have to be very careful and reflect the processes that you do when you introduce social innovation in a society, like we do in a technology assessment. We also would need something like a social innovation assessment, because to want to do something good doesn't mean you have to really do something good.
Hello, and thank you so much for your talk. I really appreciated when you talked about the power relations and also some of the challenges for social innovation. I was wondering if you could speak a bit more about the actors, the institutions, some of the factors that hinder social innovation and maybe, that resist these new ideas, especially maybe not when they emerge, but maybe at their scaling or diffusion phase, and what prevents us actually from changing and going to more transformative phases thanks to those innovations. Thank you.
I think the actors can be everywhere that are not happy with social innovation and that maybe see our future in the past activities that we have. So it's not, Trump is not thinkable without the people that elected Trump. And so this is something that is very important to see, that it's not only bad politicians that make these movements possible, but it's also something that comes from society, and everyone could be someone that tries to prevent social innovation and hinders them and stick to the old power structures. Therefore, I think that we will be better off if we work together and try to develop our ideas about what the better world is together with most partners that we have. So it is good if we have companies on board, if we have politicians on board, if we have the universities on board, together with the civil societies actor to. And I think there is no, I would say, no easy way. There is no recipe to say that is make us successful. I would say that we only can see those social innovation come into practice that we enforce, that we have the power to enforce, and that means that we have to see what kind of alliances they have to build to become successful in the way of diffusion new social practices.